Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening. And thank you for joining today's webinar around Agentic Document Extraction, hosted by our fabulous Andrea Kropp. She's going to take the lead and she's going to walk you through a live demo. We're going to take questions. And with that, Andrea, take it away.
All right. Thank you, Adrian, my favorite webinar host. Let's go ahead and jump into it. So if you're not familiar with LandingAI, we are a pioneer in the enterprise AI space that really takes a vision-first approach. So we started in the computer vision and deep learning space, and now we're applying that expertise to documents by treating them fundamentally as a picture rather than as a body of text. So today we are going to talk about document processing, but we're fundamentally achieving different results than other companies that deal with documents because of this vision-first approach. You may be familiar with our founder and executive chairman, Dr. Andrew Ng. So we've benefited a lot from his expertise to build some of the core technologies that we'll talk about and demonstrate today. And to date, we've processed about 1 billion images and documents. A little bit about me. I've worn a lot of different hats, spent some time in management consulting, spent some time leading technical teams at a Fortune 500 company, now doing technology sales support. I'm entirely self-taught as a data scientist and machine learning engineer, originally studied chemistry. And if you ever see me on the street, I would be happy to play some tennis or some board games with you. So this is the content for today, not necessarily in this order, but these are some of the topics we'll touch on. And again, I'm happy to go out of order based on the interest of the group. So we do want to do a product overview on what is agentic document extraction, some of the primary use cases by industry, and then we'll move into our visual playground, which is really a place where you can explore and get hands-on very quickly. I'll show you a couple examples in my demonstration account just to illustrate kind of heart of the plate use cases, but also more difficult tables, some advanced charts, getting into multiple languages, and some archival and handwritten documents. As part of this, I want to share kind of how do you get started with the product. So we will talk about user support and security, orientation to interacting with it programmatically through the API, and also just touch on subscriptions and pricing. The demonstration we're going to do today is featuring utility bills. So I find this demonstration is easy for people to understand and relate to, and they also understand that utility bills come in many formats, and sometimes you're asked to submit these as a proof of address, maybe to an insurance company, I don't know, even a school district, right? If you're trying to get your student into a particular school. So we'll take a look at some nice, clean digital utility bills, and then also these photographs, show how we can send all of these through agentic document extraction to get some nice standardized extractions out, and also get groundings and confidence scores. Some of the other webinars we've done this demonstration, which you can now find on the YouTube channel. So this kind of emphasizes that we do treat everything as a picture under the hood. So here we're taking some product labels and we're trying to extract out different health claims. So does it claim to be dairy-free? Does it claim to be lactose-free? Does it claim to have, no antibiotics? So very different from the utility bill use case, but fundamentally the same technology and process. And there's another webinar where we went a little bit deeper on personal financial statements. So this might be more representative of if you're applying for a loan, if you're applying for insurance, you may have to provide proof of income or proof of assets. And so it would be very common as a financial institution to receive a lot of these user uploaded documents. And of course, every pay stub is a little different, every bank statement is a little bit different, but how do we extract structured information from those at scale? So we will cover some use cases that are a little bit more hobbyist, a couple use cases that are much more enterprise at scale, and hopefully it'll give you the sense that agentic document extraction can fulfill a lot of different needs. So what is it? Some of you come to these webinars having already tried the product. Others are entirely fresh. So let me share a few slides for what is it, and then we'll actually start to see it in action. So we really think of this as document intelligence. So it's not just optical character recognition, it's much more than that. So we're really trying to extract and enrich the data that's coming from complex documents. This is going to work out of the box for any document type. You already saw some examples in the previous slide, and it's going to work out of the box regardless of the layout complexity. So important point here is that there is no layout specific training involved. This is one of the demonstration documents. It's an accident statement. So on the left, we have vehicle A. On the right, we have vehicle B. We've got a drawing of what exactly happened in the collision. So it's a nice example of a complex document that has a lot of text, checkboxes, and other content. And we'll see this one later live. So what do you get out? You get out developer-friendly JSON. So we are really focusing on providing expert, high-quality, enriched extractions in a developer-friendly format that you can then integrate with your downstream pipelines. So when you use our API, you're going to get back nice, clean, hierarchical JSON, something like this. And that's going to allow you to flexibly use this with any of your downstream processes. Um, as part of that JSON response, you will get back visual grounding. So this term grounding is kind of new with the rise of LLMs. It's really the like, what is the evidence that this is not a hallucinated answer? Like, where did this come from in the original documentation? So every piece of information that's extracted is tied back to its original precise coordinates. So, in this toy example, it's on page 0, which of course is page 1 in Python speak. And then the box coordinates left, top, right, bottom show you exactly where on page 0 that particular item is located. So we're going to provide that complete traceability and audit trail so that any downstream number, such as, Andrea has $4.30 in her bank account, has that visual grounding behind it of which page it came from in which document and exactly where on that page. And then lastly, schema-driven field extraction. So you've already seen me refer to this in terms of pulling out a bank balance or maybe pulling out an address or maybe pulling out, a blood test result from a particular document. So we do support multiple schemas. You can use a JSON schema or a Pydantic schema. We'll see both of those today. And it's a great way to get out key value pair information. So going back to that accident statement, here we have things like date of accident, witness names, vehicle A, insurance company, and you'll define the particular fields that you're interested in to extract. And then when you apply that to your document, you'll get back that nice, clean, hierarchical JSON that we talked about. Okay, so just a little bit under the hood, how do we make all of this possible? So LandingAI, we're going to be building onto this agentic vision stack over time. But fundamentally, there's a UI layer here at the top. We're going to spend most of today in visionagent.landing.ai. It's actually va.landing.ai. That is actually interacting with our Python library over here on GitHub under the hood. And then people always ask us, what makes this agentic, right? So I like to show at least this broad architecture. So the vision agent is really the orchestrator of multiple underlying agents. So there are agents to understand your request. There are agents to develop a plan. There are agents that may need to write some code, and there are agents to actually judge the result along the way. And all of these agents have available to them a tool layer. In that tool layer, you're going to see some third-party tools and quite a few LandingAI proprietary tools. So the agents have available the tools. The agents need to think about the request, execute the request. Right now, we're at about a median of 8 seconds per page, so not too long to wait on the agents, and then that'll be returned to you in the UI layer. We get a lot of questions about like what is our proprietary technology, kind of what makes what makes this better, what makes this work. So I'll share just really high level, can't give away the entire secret sauce. But two important things to know about are the layout model and the table model. So these are foundational models that are proprietary to LandingAI. The layout model first is going to detect, classify, and number the chunks in a document in the way that a human would. So here's the top of an electric bill. The purple here is saying like this is something that appears in the margin. Green is a text block, blue is a table block. And so first we're identifying each one of these chunks. And if you are interested in developing RAG pipelines, stands for Retrieval Augmented Generation, you know that part of that process is developing a chunking strategy. And so this is a much smarter chunking strategy rather than just doing, every 200 characters. We also have a table model underneath the hood to detect rows, columns, and key value pairs, often in the absence of clear visual guidelines. So this example, if it's not too small for you, is actually a one-row table. So it says part number and description and sales quantity, and these are some rear shock absorbers. There's 120 of them. So this part at the top is actually a one-row table, although there's no visual markings for that. And then we also have some key value pairs here, such as country of origin and Thailand, but there's this big gap in between. So a lot of other systems are not going to recognize this as a table and a set of key value pairs. So this is kind of the key essence of our table model to understand, in the absence of visual guidelines, sometimes that this actually is a table. Okay, let's go through a couple use cases and then Adrian, I'll go ahead and open it up to questions. I do this in a slightly different order each time. I'm still trying to figure out exactly what's best. And sometimes the questions we know that we're going to cover later, so I may answer them that way. So again, it said, there's use cases here for hobbyists, there's use cases for large enterprise. We are able to accommodate extremely high rate limits for some of the largest financial institutions. So they're using our service for things like know your customer and onboarding. Again, utility bills, bank statements, identification documents, mortgage and loan processing, internally in their finance department to process invoices, and also for things related to business tax. Healthcare. So healthcare, it's critically important to get this information right, right? So if you're pulling information from a blood test or a pathology report or patient intake forms, really critical to get this information right. And there's still a lot of humans involved in kind of pushing around and reviewing some of the paperwork in healthcare. So we've made a lot of advances with electronic health records, but I know when it's my health on the line, I want to make sure that, the referring physician is receiving all of my prior information and is understanding that correctly. Shipping logistics is another big segment where there's a lot of paper. So whether it's bills of lading, certificates of origin, customs declarations, there's a lot of different layouts and formats from different countries, different shipping lines, of course, a lot of different languages involved here as well. And lastly, archive and library sciences. So these types of documents are all one of a kind, right? You're never going to be able to do layout training on these documents, but we're finding a lot of successes with these use cases as well. So let's go ahead and do some demonstrations. So right here, I'm on our main website, landing.ai. And when you select the Agentic Document Extraction, you'll be taken to this page. I'm not going to repeat the information on this page, But it is absolutely worth watching the header video. The reason why we're here really is I want to point out this white button. So if you click this white button, you will actually be taken to the visual playground. You'll be asked to create an account initially. You can create an account in the US or the EU region. You can use a personal or a professional email. And when you do that, you'll be given a couple free credits to start actually experimenting with your own documents. So, I guess to start from the beginning, actually, when you first come inside, it's going to look like this. And we mentioned we have multiple agentic vision APIs, but today we're talking about this one on the left-hand side, the agentic document extraction. So if you click Try in Playground, now you'll be in a view like this. And you'll have these 4 example files already preloaded for you, one of which is that accident statement that we saw in the slides. So here's a great example of a complex document. We built this visual playground to really allow you to examine the outputs and kind of quickly zoom in and say, is that actually correct in the extractions over here on the right? So the service we're offering is an API, but the visual playground is for you to do testing, experimentation, and kind of convince yourself that things are working correctly. This is very interactive. So as I click on any of the blocks here on the right-hand side, you see them highlighted on the left. And similarly, if I'm clicking on any of the blocks on the left, it will kind of keep up with me and show me those extractions on the right. So again, it's a great way to kind of zoom in on here, like text block 10, and compare it to the extraction and say, is the system getting that information correct? So for each document that you load, you'll get a Markdown and a JSON response. The JSON response has that same kind of interactivity where you can click on a particular block and see where that is in the JSON. So let's do one from scratch. So you can upload a document. You can also just drag and drop. So today we're going to work with a couple electric bills, and you'll see me kind of dragging things from off screen, but let's drag in this kind of digital one first. Okay. So on average right now, parsing takes about 8 seconds median, and that is per page. So you'll notice that this is a 4-page document. Once I get the results back, I will actually be able to then kind of advance through the different pages. So I think I'll have to go back to the recording and see how long that actually took, but it felt pretty fast. So we've got back the Markdown response. And here I could then start to verify some specific information like this 67.9 looks good. Let's maybe take a look at the account number, looks good. Right, so this is a chance to kind of preview that extraction. Let's go ahead and drop the photograph in here. Photograph's going to be a little bit more challenging. So this is just a 1-pager. It is a JPEG image. It's got a little bit of background to it. The document is rotated maybe, 3 degrees to the side, something like that. That is all going to be just fine with this system. So here we're seeing all of the different chunks that were identified. And again, things like purple are the margin. Here we've got a table for the billing summary. Here we've got a figure, which is the bar chart, and also a best attempt at extracting the specific values from that bar chart. So all of that happened, in a matter of a couple seconds without any sort of layout specific training. All right. I have to like I have to be careful to not like try to read the questions as I'm doing this. So there is one in there about can you convert checkboxes into Booleans? And absolutely yes. So if you remember this demonstration, here we are actually just outputting a true or false, and You could absolutely do that with the checkbox as well to say, if the box is checked, return true. If it's not checked, return false. And we'll see that in the field extraction in a moment. Okay, so let's go ahead and move on to field extraction then. Oh, actually, I'm going to show you a couple other examples. So we did these two utility statements. Let's look at a couple other examples that we have loaded here. So here is a classic invoice, right? We have a lot of organizations using us for invoices. Couple things to note here, that you're probably most interested in the table block in the center. You may have also noticed this QR code or this signature. Actually, next week we will be introducing some new chunk types specifically for QR codes, barcodes, signatures. So these will start to be their own type where you can actually then say like who signed this document. Here's an example of a bill of lading. This starts to get into examples of tables that don't have kind of clear layouts to them, but we are getting the header information, right? And then getting, the gross weight here of everything in the second row. Even though when you look at like the way that the table is constructed, this 19038 is kind of overlapped by this other text. So, absolutely, try this on your more difficult documents. Here's an example of one of those signatures that is pretty soon going to be detected as a signature. Um, I like to include this one as kind of, like let's be serious here. Like there's a lot of important documents in healthcare and we want to get them right. Right. So if this is a resuscitation status in terms of like what are your wishes in an emergency, like we want to make sure that we're extracting this information correctly. So what specific interventions are you signing off on? Who is your, well, yeah, we'll just leave it at that. Like what specific interventions, right? Like, so do you want blood products, nutritional support, dialysis, ventilation? So this is another example of checkbox extraction, but also, a document that is critically important to get right. This is an example I like to share because it has so many different chart types. So far we've been focusing a lot on text and tables. This document, as we click through it, has a ridiculous number of different chart types. So of course we have, extractions from pie charts. We've got some interesting spider charts. What else is in here? Of course, your standard bar chart, some line charts. So what I like about this example is it would be extremely difficult out of the box to understand all of this text and all of these different chart types. And that is really kind of the difficult case that we're specializing in. So, of course, this is an equity research report. So if you were an investment analyst and you wanted to create kind of a RAG pipeline to be able to actually chat with this document, you're going to be able to create a pipeline where you can actually chat with the figures in an intelligent way, not just with the text. So we're really providing this kind of rich extraction of the figures, and also, this tiny text in the appendix. So another thing to say about tables, right now we're returning an entire table, such as like chunk 159. If you asked like what is the multiple for LTM? I don't even know what that means, right? But it would return 22.9 and it would say that came from chunk 159. In the near future, we're actually going to have cell references. So rather than just telling you it came from somewhere in this table, it will actually refer to the specific cell that it came from. So I'm kind of weaving in some of the upcoming product features as we go through the existing product. This is another fun example. You saw some product images earlier. This also starts to get into multilingual support. So I was really surprised to see 4 different languages on one product packaging. Of course, living in the US, almost everything is English only. So I found this very novel. Don't know if it's novel to all of you tuned in today, but it's also a great way to demonstrate multilingual support. So definitely do try this out with other languages, and including character-based languages. Sticking with the theme of languages, here's some German text. I actually do speak German, so this is one that I could actually review, but we're also starting to get into handwriting. Um, and continuing on the theme of handwriting, here would be, a document which has a lot of challenging handwriting, but which also has poor scan quality. So here on this, death certificate, occupation is farmer, birthplace is Pennsylvania. So this is both handwritten as well as not a great digital copy in the first place. And that's kind of a good segue into some of this like archival information where documents sometimes are damaged. So here was an example that we pulled together for the 4th of July where we've got some areas where the text is obscured. I think there's some areas with some, water damage or maybe, spilled some coffee on it. But if you do zoom in on these, I think a human would say that this name is Reginald and the one below it is Nicholas. And that is coming through correctly in the extraction. So we're seeing very good performance on slightly damaged documents as well. So let me pause there and see if we have some questions.
We do. What type of evals do you use to validate extraction is accurate? Are the methodologies you suggest or as part of the library or service that gives that evidence outside of the log or of segmented images? Does that make sense?
Yeah, so evaluation. So we do our own benchmark testing internally. We have a regression set. So every time we release a new feature that we think is going to make things better, of course, we test it on all of our historical known documents to make sure that we aren't accidentally making things worse. So we have developed our own evaluation set over time. And really, our best advice is for you to do the same for the types of documents that you care about. I get asked this all the time, and it's like, I don't know which industry you're in, but say that you're in healthcare and I give you some benchmark from financial services, or you're in education and I give you some, benchmark from transportation. Sometimes that benchmark is helpful and you can kind of report it to management and say, hey, we should do at least a proof of concept here, look at these benchmarks. But usually people want to see it on their own data. So, of course, it does actually take a human to look at something like this to say, okay, the correct answer for the total due is 167.51. And it's going to take a little bit of time to maybe like build up 50 of those, right? And then compare the output from our system to that ground truth. But honestly, like building your own ground truth and doing your own evaluation is the route that most people are going. It's
Next, sorry.
Yeah, yeah. No, I was gonna say like it's not the answer people want, right? Because they're like, oh, that sounds like a lot of effort. But it is the right way to convince yourself and to convince others.
Next question. Is there a way to use the landing.ai ADE ADE on a sandbox cloud, i.e., private instance for CUI documents?
Okay. Maybe you could clarify what CUI means. But we do have a couple different deployment options, and I'm realizing I don't have that slide open. So what you're seeing me demonstrate here is our multi-tenant SaaS. So this is running in the cloud, either AWS East or AWS in Ireland. So choose EU or US. Second option. Second option is to have your own instance of Landing Lens in your own single tenant SaaS. So in our documentation, you'll see this referred to as VPL. It's kind of a term we made up. It stands for Virtual Private Landing Lens, but you would recognize it as single tenant SaaS. Third option. Third option would be to run inside your VPC. So whether that's AWS, Azure, or GCP, so we can provide our technology inside of your virtual private cloud. Fourth option, we have a version of Agentic Document Extraction fully inside of Snowflake. So if you are a Snowflake customer, that may be an option to look at. So like documents never leave your Snowflake environment, just like in option three, the documents never leave your AWS, Azure, or GCP environment. So this is the type of question we deal with in our enterprise sales calls to really understand like the security requirements for your documents, like your existing infrastructure investments, and kind of give you advice. Hopefully you can test a little bit in our multi-tenant SaaS. You have a few redacted documents or less secure documents, but then we do have those other options available.
We had further clarification. So they're referring to Department of Defense classification classified. CUI stands for controlled unclassified information. It's a type of unclassified information within the US federal government that requires special handling and protection.
Okay. Um, let's book a call to talk about that. I know that we are in conversations with some other organizations about GovCloud, FedRAMP, some other things that like I am not an expert in, but that sound like they would be relevant to this question asker.
Let's see, here we go. How does ADE improve over traditional OCR?
Uh, So I've been trying to weave that in a bit. So traditional OCR is not going to do well with like those tables we saw where there's no clear lines. Like it may be able to extract the text, but it's not going to understand like which header goes with which row or like get the key value pairs right. Traditional OCR sometimes will also just like read directly across a row. So I think I have an example over here. So something like um, something like this document. So it kind of inherently has a two-column layout to it, but then it's got this table which kind of interrupts the layout. And traditional OCR will sometimes be dumb and will actually kind of read straight across. So it'll say like the first occurrence of like bill one, the mean total scores, right? So the layout detection before actually recognizing the characters in the text actually becomes really important to keep things together. So like this text block 26, where like the word table gets cut in half between this chunk and this chunk, the fact that the chunks are numbered actually allows you to bring that back together in a way that OCR is never going to be able to do.
Okay, I think we can jump
Yeah.
back into it and take additional
Okay.
questions after.
Yeah. Okay, so let's do some stuff with code. So this is fundamentally an API service. The visual playground is for experimentation. So we're going to do the same two documents here in code. So we offer a library called Agentic Doc. You're only going to need this one function called parse. I actually wound up not using this in this demonstration, so I'm just going to comment that out. So you are going to need an API key, which you can obtain from the Visual Playground. And then there's a couple parameters to set for your batch size and your max workers. So I'll come back to this. We can process 100 files simultaneously. So because electric bills rarely have more than 4 pages, I've set this up to say, let's work on 25 utility bills simultaneously. Each one of them can have up to 4 workers, which means there's 1 worker per page in the document. So again, we can give you advice about kind of optimal settings to maximize throughput. Okay, we're working with some documents on my local file system. We also offer upstream connectors. So if your documents are in S3, in Azure Blob Storage, they're in Snowflake, there's a variety of easy connectors, but right now we just have these two that are on my local file system. And we're going to send them to parse and we're going to watch what happens. So I'm going to collapse some of this, and we're going to watch what happens here in this groundings folder and in this results folder. So I have to execute this cell, put this back in the foreground. Okay, so my API key is valid. I'm sending two documents simultaneously. One of them was that 4-pager, one of them was the single image. So it looks like both of them have been returned at this point. And now I could open one of these up and we could take a look at the JSON. And let's make it a little bit prettier. Okay. So this is the same response we got for electric bill D in the visual playground, right? So we've got the bounding boxes, we've got the actual content of each chunk, and now additionally we have the image path of where on my file system that chunk has been saved. So if we go back to look at the groundings folder, we now have all of these individual chunks available as small references as visual grounding. So this is optional, right? So some people are just going to say, okay, this is like just doubling the size of my data set. I don't actually need all of these pictures. Others are going to say this is exactly what I need for that visual grounding, so that if the extracted value is 176.51, I can actually then show that as part of the result to say, like, this is the part of the document that it came from. So that all happened here. We just used parse. We sent the two documents, and then optionally, we saved the results and saved those groundings. These cells are really not that important. This is just printing a few things to screen, right? So here we're seeing all of the chunks associated with that document. Okay, let's move on to field extraction. So we're going to do a few things in the visual playground, and then we'll come back to the code. Let's try this one before we move on. Okay, start from scratch. Add a new field. Okay, let's go with account number. Okay, so account number, the description field is optional, but will give you a much better extraction quality. So I now have account number is this number starting with 96, and it must be found in two places in the document because I have two chunk references for where it was found. And indeed, I can see it once up here. It must be somewhere else on the page as well. So one option is just building up your own schema piece by piece. Couple ways to accelerate this. So I can start with suggestions. And this is actually going to suggest a schema based on the information that it finds in the document. And I can go ahead and run that. So this is what's called a Pydantic schema. Pydantic is open source, has great documentation for how to use these schemas. We only support one level of nesting. So here we have some things related to the account, some things related to the billing. And again, this was generated automatically just for your convenience and to kind of get you started. If this is not the schema you want, you can build it exactly the way that you want. But sometimes it'll save you a lot of time and I'll give you some good ideas about how to better express the description to clearly explain what you want. And then the last option, I'm just going to hit start over again. Last option is going to be to upload a schema. I find this a little bit hidden here behind the three dots. So this is the place to upload your schema. And I have one prepared in advance here called utilities. So if you do have a schema prepared in advance, you can simply upload that and then apply it to your document. So this is probably going to be the more common way to test the same schema across many documents is you would prepare it in advance and then upload it. Once you have the schema that you want, you can also then download it. So there is a kind of upload, download, play with it, make it what you want. And this code button will give you both the Pydantic syntax as well as the JSON syntax. So a couple different ways to interact with this. I'm going to go ahead and copy this entire cell. And we're going to come back over to the notebook. And again, this was left over from yesterday's demonstration, so I'm going to delete all of that. Okay, so paste Pydantic schema from Visual Playground. So I do have in memory now this schema that I just copied. It's not the one I just deleted, it's the one I just copied. And in order to use it, I just need to update this. So let's just send the first document. And we'll go ahead and execute that. Okay, so here we're actually using parse again without some of those optional statements. So we're not saving the results or saving the groundings. We're just sending one document and we're including this model as our extraction model. So at this point, we are reparsing the same document that we already did before, which of course is kind of a waste of compute. So you are able to parse once and then extract many. That is currently available in our API. It's going to be available in the Python library next week, and there's actually going to be a big announcement around that. So we've gotten a lot of requests to like parse once and extract many. So here we're just printing the results that come back. So we've got the customer name, the account number, the service address. So this is all looking quite good. This was just same demonstration using a JSON schema. So gives you some flexibility in how to write your schema. I don't really need to run this again because it's just sending the same document with a different schema. So now just to say, like, let's do this at slightly bigger scale. Again, 9 documents is not huge scale per se, but I do have 9 different bills. And here, result FE is my results with the feature extraction. So, yeah, I was just reminding myself whether I executed this cell that has this schema. So let me just make sure I did that. Yes, okay. It would give an error if I didn't run that cell. Okay, so here again, like this is about as simple as it gets, right? I'm going to send everything in that folder and I'm going to apply this schema. So let's go ahead and do that. So here, parsing 9 documents. Again, we can do 100 at a time. And then in terms of rate limits on the API, the rate limits are in addition to the parallelism. So if you sent 10,000 documents, it would start processing 100 at a time. And then as soon as one was completed, it would pick up the next one from the queue. So between the parallelism and the API rate limit, we can actually handle, I forget the exact number, we can handle a lot of documents. I'll have to actually work that into the slides. It's a very frequent question. But it looks like we've got everything completed, right? So we have 9 parsed documents. And then here we're just going to convert that into a nice, pretty table. So in most cases, it's the table of the structured information that people are actually after. So here we've got 9 original documents. We've got the customer names, the account numbers. And then, of course, we can save that to a CSV file. And then last thing I want to share here is the chunk references and the confidence scores. So pulling out just a couple of the fields. So here's that account number starting with 96 that we've seen a few times. So we've got the chunk references for that account number. And now we also have a confidence interval or a confidence score. So this, I realized my variable name here looks like account no confidence, but it's really account number confidence, right? So we're 0.99 confident that this is the accurate account number. And this is really going to allow you to create some sort of a human in the loop process where you may only visually verify values that fall below a particular confidence interval. So here's one that's coming in at 0.75. So this might be a good candidate to actually surface this chunk, put it side by side with this number, and then have a human say like accept or reject or correct it if it needs correction. But the vast majority of the utility bills can now flow through the system with just a small number being kicked out for human review. I'll note that the confidence score is still somewhat experimental, so occasionally you'll get like a not a number result here. And we are actively seeking feedback on the confidence score to continue to improve that. In the interest of time, let me go through the things that I know are frequent questions, and then we should be able to take a few user questions. So let's talk about security. This page is on our public website. If you go down to the footer, it is this link here, security and compliance, so it's easy to find. This really lays out everything for you in terms of compliance frameworks. So we are SOC 2, GDPR, and HIPAA compliant, and that is for our multi-tenant SaaS. So you don't need to pursue one of those other options to get these compliance frameworks. People ask very frequently, what do you do with our data? Do you use our documents to train on? And that is really spelled out here with the zero data retention option. So we have the option of turning on zero data retention for your account. If you enable this option, the data is processed in memory and is not stored by us or our sub-processors, and it's used exclusively for the extraction process and immediately discarded. So this is what allows us to process personally identifiable information, including PHI. And as part of this, we can sign a business associate agreement with you, which is part of the HIPAA compliance. So for many teams, between the SOC 2, the HIPAA, the GDPR, and the zero data retention, that is sufficient for them to be able to use our multi-tenant SaaS. Let me talk a little bit about the API. Man, I really mismanaged time today. Apologies. So this is our public documentation. You can get to the documentation from this link in the playground. So that'll take you through right here. There's documentation for the playground, for the REST API, and for the Python library. We would definitely steer you toward the Python library if possible, because it has significant advantages over calling the REST API directly. But these two tiles will take you to the two sets of documentation. This is what the REST API documentation looks like. It's going to give you examples for basic command line Python JavaScript. But we do steer you toward the Python library wherever possible because it has some additional benefits. So it has much better long document support, also error and retry handling, and a variety of helper utilities. So all of this is available for one library that you can pip install. We do publish updates to this library probably about once a week at this point, so we are continuously improving it. On support, so there's a page in the documentation called support. Couple things to highlight here is the Discord community and also the helper scripts. So we do have a very active community and an excellent developer relations specialist who is in the community. So if you come into Discord and you come to start here, there's this welcome post. So if you need help with agentic document extraction, there is a bot that's been trained on all of our documentation. So you can ask the bot to get an immediate answer. For human help, you can submit a ticket for one-on-one support. And of course, you can engage with like all of the other people in the community. So this is a great place to just post questions, engage with other users. There's, I could think close to 2,000 people in here. So it's a great place for use case ideas. The other tile here, scripts and demos. This is actually where we'll be posting the code from today's demo for the utility bills. So this will take you through to a different GitHub repo. We call this ADE helper scripts. And the scripts here are organized either by functional area or by industry or by key workflows. So you can come in here and kind of browse by industry or browse by workflow and try to find some starter code that pertains to you. Let's take a few questions there, and I've got some other tabs open. We'll see where we go with our remaining 8 minutes.
Okay, here we go.
Yeah.
What is visual grounding in ADE?
So the visual grounding are the chunks that are these little pieces. So each value which is extracted comes from a chunk, and each chunk has a reference number to allow you to display it and verify that information. So if you were going to extract this customer name, it comes from this chunk. And so this is kind of the term visual grounding to say this answer came from this chunk. And by the way, here's a picture of it.
Next question. Can ADE integrate with LLM workflows like retrieval augmented generation, also known as RAG?
Yes, it's actually one of the strongest use cases. There's a really excellent customer case study on the website that I'll steer you toward to learn more about. This is a great case study to look at because like their primary use case is retrieval augmented generation. They provide a tool for physicians at many leading hospitals to allow them to quickly look up answers to clinical questions. So I think he shares an example in here, like, uh, yeah, so when should I consider outpatient management of a pulmonary embolism, right? So this is the type of question that a provider can ask, right? So like they're sitting with a patient, they leave the room briefly, they're able to ask this expert system a question. And this is now fueled by LandingAI's agentic document extraction. And this is a great example that he shares in the video where the answer is found inside of a flowchart. And so a typical OCR system would largely ignore this flowchart or would basically just like read the values in the flowchart, but is not going to understand the top down connections here to say like if this is true about the patient, then that, and like if this other thing is true, then that. So he shares a great example of how the figure extraction winds up being the correct answer to this clinical question. So this is really one of our strongest use cases. So we'd highly encourage you to explore this case study, which I think I wound up getting to from the healthcare page, but is probably linked from other pages as well.
Last question. Why are document processing pipelines inherently so complex?
Um, why ask why? I don't know that we're ever going to simplify it. I have scraps of paper all over my desk, right? Like here's a Costco receipt, like here's an explanation of benefits, here's like a renewal for my driver's license. You can see that I have a very messy desk. They're just all different. And so being able to create one system that can handle them all is like a godsend to people that are dealing with this complexity. So I don't know. I'm going to answer that with like, why ask why? They are complex and it's probably not going to change anytime soon.
That is our webinar. It's a wrap. Andrea, thank you for a great presentation to our attendees. We really appreciate you taking the time to learn about agentic document extraction. Again, thank you for joining us today. Have a great day. Thank you, Andrea.